Good to go.
Good to go?
So you ready in 3, 2.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Chisholm, and we are doing this little side project thing that's started to take off a little bit. I don't know if we're going to call this thing Tales from the Late Show or what we're going to call it, but those of you who know me know that I'm a huge, huge fan of David Letterman and the culture around all of Dave's shows. And we have gotten today a really cool opportunity, and it's to speak with Glynn Borders, who was in charge of the special effects and much of the props and the practical special effects of the Late Show for a long time. Glynn, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to let us pick your brain a little bit today, man.
Oh, sure. Don't pick too much, though. I might scab up.
Yeah, no kidding. What was your official title for the Late Show?
Special effects director.
Special effects director. And over the years, you kind of evolved into that role, didn't you?
I did. I started there working in the electrics department, and the way that happened is funny. I was working on a Broadway show, My Fair Lady, with Richard Chamberlain.
Oh, wow.
And one of the guys that worked in the electrics department we became buddies. And when that show was closing, he just said to me, you like Letterman? I could get you on Letterman. And I went, sure. Next week, they called me. There for the next 22 years.
For 22 years. So were you an actual employee of Worldwide Pants that entire time, or were you working as a subcontractor? How did that go?
I was working through CBS as a local one stagehand.
Okay.
Stagehands Union.
Okay. And so did that mean you worked on other CBS properties, or were you mostly the Late Show took up most of your time?
I was the guy for the network. I also did the early show, which is now CBS This Morning.
Yep.
I did soap operas. I did some of the other news shows if they needed an effect of some kind. I was a network guy, but I was mostly assigned to the Late Show.
And happily so. You have very good memories of working for the Late Show.
Look, I used to tell people that I had the coolest job in New York City. I mean, not only could I'm a guy that could set stuntmen on fire, not get in trouble for it, but most importantly, put them out.
Right.
And they paid me well for it, so it was pretty cool.
Oh, that's unbelievable. Now you grew up close to my parents. My parents on the Canadian side, you're on the American side. You grew up in Detroit.
I did, yeah.
How long did you live in Detroit for?
I left home about 18, 19. Mm-hmm. Went away to school, went to the Michigan State area, then found my way out here, and the rest is history.
Are you a New Yorker now?
I lived in LA.
Yeah.
I'm a New Yorker. I've been here. Oh God, I've been here 40 years, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm saying wow because there are so many of us. New York has that mystique to it. My wife and I, we constantly talk about how New York is our favorite American city by far. When I try and describe New York to people, New York City, I say that it's alive. The city's alive. It has a pulse. How are things out in New York right now, man? I know that you've had a stage show that up until this last year here was kind of gaining some momentum. You're looking at getting another theater for it. How are things in New York right now?
Well, it still has a pulse. Things have changed. Obviously, we had really bad times in March and April.
Yep.
But we're opened in the sense that our restaurants are outdoors now. People are set up on the street right outside their businesses. They got the lights, they got the tents, they got everything. It looks great. So we're dining out again, which I did all the time until COVID. Then all of a sudden I got to cook. So now I'm back to eating out again. And so, we're a town that wears masks and socially distanced, and we're out being social again. And so that pulse is there. We just can't go to the movies or go to the theater or, those sort of things. But I can hang out with my friends again. So that's a cool thing.
Right on. Talk a little bit about the stage show. So we're going to get back into Letterman here in a second, but since leaving, since Dave left, you went to work for Colbert for a little while.
I worked for Colbert for 1 year.
For 1 year. And then after that, you went back to your roots when it came to Broadway, or when it came to live theater.
Yeah. I had a show on I had a show on Josephine Baker called The Dark Star from Harlem before I became a stagehand, before I started working for Letterman. And we had a problem with the producer, and so we sat on the show because we didn't want any of the rights to go to him.
Right.
So while I was sitting on the show, within the next 9 months, I started working on Broadway and ended up working at the Late Show. And by the time the rights did come back to me, well, now I'm the assistant special effects guy, and then I become the special effects guy. And this was just a job I could not walk away. I mean, who walks away from the coolest job in New York? Nobody does.
Absolutely.
So I stuck around until I could retire. And that was 1 year after Dave left, 1 year with Colbert.
Yep.
I left just before the elections.
Wow.
And yeah, I left September 1st. And I haven't looked back. I mean, I've gone on, and we're doing the show on Josephine Baker. We did it last November and December. We did really well. We sold out almost nightly. We had nightly standing ovations. We were looking to move this fall. And so now we're in limbo because we don't know what's going on yet. So hopefully we'll be back next spring, because I'm thinking it's going to take till at least June before we're doing anything. And so that's what I'm aiming for with this show.
That's really cool. And please keep us posted within the group. I know that, you know, when we talk about going to New York and seeing all the landmarks and things like that, one of the cool things is being part of something that the locals like to do. And when you think about somebody who worked on the show for all these years, you know, we're all, I know the fans all consider ourselves family of those of the Late Show. So I know we would love to support things that the family do. So please, please keep us posted for when that show does get back going again.
Will do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Now it's the coolest job in the entire world. I've got a lot of questions. One of the first questions, when I've got a big Letterman fan who's a buddy of mine. And when I told him that you and I had started talking, that one of the first things he asked me was, did he get to throw anything off the roof? I think that's...
I did. I got to throw a lot of things off the roof. Before I became the special effects director, I worked a lot with the prop department. That's Pat Farmer and his team.
Sure.
And depending on what it was, it took so many guys to do it. One that stands out to me that's a little painful in a way, on one Super Bowl, well, preparing for Super Bowl Sunday, we were doing a show. We were throwing chips and salsa off the roof. So we had like 6 guys up there with this big gigantic bowl filled with salsa. That's the first thing we do. We're opening cans and cans and cans of salsa and trying, no, it's not enough, more, until we finally get the amount that they want us to have in there. And so it's filled up, and we have it on a 4x8 plywood sheet.
Yep.
And so that we can hold it and hold that in place and just kind of tip it over the edge, because it's sitting on the edge of the roof for leverage. Otherwise, we have to all like do this. So it's full of salsa, and it's the spicy salsa. And so when we get it going, for some reason, somebody stopped, and it started swishing back and forth in the bowl. And all of a sudden it went and all over my head. I was face full of salsa, and that's why I know it was spicy, because it was in my eyes, it was in my nose, it was everywhere. And of course, I through my blurriness, I look up and I see a red light in my face, and so I just go,
deadpan.
Absolutely.
Genius.
When you work around a show like that, you pick up tips, you know.
Absolutely. And I guess you know, that's really, it's where do you start when you're talking to a guy who worked there for literally decades? Go to some of the highlights of things that you created that we would have seen on screen. I know the Vibrating Desk is one of them. What else did we?
That's right.
Did we get a chance to see on there? The Vibrating Desk was really cool, actually. Was that a get-up that once it was hooked up to Dave's desk, that was it? It could always vibrate, or was that a one-shot deal?
Well, we were setting it up to do it more than once. And what I did is, you know, Pat Farmer put it on a bed of springs. Because first they didn't come to me. They didn't think it was a special effect. First they went to the carpenter, because it's scenery. It's a big oak desk, so it's scenery. So they go to him to make the thing vibrate. And I'm thinking to myself, it's a special effect. And so when he didn't get it going, then they went to Pat Farmer, who was the prop guy, and he made a bed of springs, and that didn't really get it going. So finally they came to me. And so I started dealing with power tools. The first thing I tried was a power sander. I attached a power sander underneath the desk, and I put a glass of water on the desk, and you could see the water rippling and vibrating.
Sure.
Well, the producers come down and say, oh, no, we want to see the whole desk vibrate. Oh, it's a big oak desk. How are you going to make that vibrate? So I couldn't think of anything, and I started attaching things, and I sent the outside props person, Ruth, out to buy a reciprocal drill, a sawzall, rather, and attached it, took off the blade, put a variac on the speed, on the motor so I could slow the motor down. And when I got it right, I had pads. I made pads so that it didn't boom, boom, boom against it. You could hear it, so I wanted it to be nice and quiet. So when I got the head of it on the pads, and that was on the springs, and I found the right speed with the variac, and it was just jumping all of a sudden, and all over the place, and then all of a sudden, it found its groove. And it just bounced like this with this very mechanical sound. And I did that. I worked through lunch because I just couldn't get it going. And so, and I got that look that you get when you're the special effects director when things aren't working. It's like, he can't make it work, you know? So now I'm very competitive. So I finally got the thing working through lunch, and I go out in the hallway and I go, score! And then everyone comes in and says, let's see what you got. And I hit the switch, and yang, 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 yang. It was a great moment.
Well,
and then Dave wouldn't use it. You know,
what?
the writers, no, he wouldn't use it for whatever reason. It was in the later years, he's a little grumpier.
Sure.
And sometimes he wanted to do effects, and sometimes he didn't want to do effects. But the writers kept wanting him to do it, and the producers. And so we would set it up, wait for when the last list of skits were gonna be approved.
Yep.
And every day they would go cut. And so now I have to go out there and I got to take it apart before Dave comes down and the music starts and the audience comes in. And so we did that 8 days in a row. And finally on the 8th day, he decided to do it. Well, by that time, the motor had worn out and it just wasn't the same thing. So he could put his knees under, and he was bouncing on the springs with his knees. And I'm like, oh God, if he had done this just on day 5, it would have looked great. But there it is.
And on the
he did say, this has never been done anywhere on television. Hit it, boys, a vibrating desk.
And on the 8th day, Dave vibrated his desk.
Yeah.
That's and it's cool. Like I'm going, if for those who are watching this, if you want to go to YouTube, you can find some really cool versions of this, including one of the videos that Glynn, you put up, actually showing the thing backstage working. And
yes.
It's impressive to see something like that. The pressure that you must have felt working at that job, it must be a unique type of pressure that a lot of us just don't really get to feel. You get comedy writers who come up with a concept, or Dave comes up with a concept. They come to you and they say, hey, make this work.
Right.
Is that essentially a day in the life of Glynn at the Late Show?
Absolutely. And they wanted it that day, usually. I mean,
right.
Sometimes we would have a tomorrow thing. Sometimes we would have a next week thing. And even sometimes we would have a next month thing. Rarely. It was always what they needed today, whether I had the materials to make it work or not. I had to either rent things, build things, whatever. I had to have it ready for rehearsal to show it to Jerry Foley, the director.
Yep.
And then we would go from there. So yeah, and the thing about it, special effects really is another actor, you know, because if we're the punchline to the joke, everyone knows when the joke doesn't work.
Right.
And when the joke does work, there's this big, huge laugh. I mean, my demo reel is full of them where the effect happens and this big laughter. And so, so when it doesn't happen, it is really nerve-wracking. And I have a few of those where it didn't work, or even just like my first effect alone, as the assistant, and my boss Gene went on vacation.
Right.
And so I'm hoping there's no effects, because the minimal thing that we did per day was turn on the hazers for the lights for the rock and roll numbers, and just turn on the hazers off. I'm
Yep.
good with that. Well, they came up with a bit on the very first day, and it was a bit that speed whittling. And so Dave had a log, and he had a knife, and he's whittling, and he's saying, yeah, I've taken up whittling. He said, but here's something that people don't know. I've been taking up speed whittling. And so he puts it below the desk, and he's doing, his thing. And I asked my boss, I called him, I said, how do I do this? And then he told me, take wood chips, put them in a squirrel cage fan. I'm in there pouring them in one direction, and the chips are flying out over Dave's shoulder. And he's doing this, and the chips are flying everywhere. My very first effect, it went over big time, but I was sweating bullets.
I can only imagine. That's a unique type of pressure that I don't know that any of us have really had a chance to feel. It's a bit of a like, you go in that audience, and the energy that's in that room when the show is recording is it's palpable. It is just this intense energy, and for the show flows really, really smoothly. At least
it was a machine.
Yeah, absolutely. And so your thing's got to work, and it's got to work right now.
Yeah, I can give you another one. One that
please.
really, really made me sweat. Do you remember this character we had? It was this German actor, and I don't remember his name. And he came on, and he was German Mork, German Fonzie, that sort of thing. And so Dave would speak to him in English, and he would speak back to Dave in German with the subtitles.
Absolutely.
Well, one day we did German Mork. And you remember Mork, on Mork and Mindy, he drank with his finger. He put the finger in and the water goes down.
Yes.
So that's the joke. So, of course, being German Mork, he's going to drink beer from a stein. And so I knew what to do with that. So I say, I got to have a plastic stein because of his glass with a very small, I might break it, and I'm going to do it over and over and over. So I had to do it with a very small drill bit and then a bigger one. And what I did is I created a stopper that had a monofilament on it, and with a little putty substance. And I had it in there, and it was on a little pedestal, and I'm behind the curtain, behind the pedestal. And when the cue happens, I pull it, the plug goes out, the liquid goes down. Worked in rehearsal.
Oh, famous last words, worked in rehearsal.
Worked in rehearsal. Got to do into the show, and I'm back there, everything's set up. Mork's on stage, German Mork's on stage, Dave's talking to him. You got the subtitles going, the stage manager, Biff, is next to me, and Biff goes, I pull it, and the line breaks. Now, a little bit of the putty came out, just a little bit. And so I'm standing there holding the string in my hand, and I could hear the director going, pull, pull, pull. And I'm like, it's broke, And so it's trickling out. And he's got his finger in there, and Dave's sitting over there with, that Dave look, and he looks at the audience, and he looks again, and the audience is waiting, and I'm like sweating like crazy. And then finally they're done with it, and Dave turns around to the audience, and I'm paraphrasing again, only David Letterman could do it. And he says, that German Mork, he really puts it away. Audience falls out. I could never deliver that line and make that line funny, but Dave's delivered that line. It was sort of like that, and just huge laughter. So, and I learned this with other shows, doing special effects on television, but especially that show. A broken effect is not always the end of the world, because with a comic mind like David Letterman, he's going to make it funny.
Yes.
And that's all they want. And the audience knows something went wrong, and he still makes it funny. Genius.
Right. And that was really the charm of that show, is the idea that things go wrong, and there are stagehands. Like, how many people that people you even worked with became characters on the show, and in any other show
Several.
that there are people that would appear on the credits, but at the Late Show, you never know when you might become a character on this place.
True. Yeah, a lot of the guys, Pat Farmer really did well with it. I was always happy for him. Art Kelly, who you had, which was just amazing. And that's the thing about that show too. It didn't come down to who's the funny guy on the crew or anything like that. It was, what does the guy look like, and what can we write for him?
Right.
Art Kelly looked like Mike Singletary.
Yeah.
And Mike Singletary was coaching the San Francisco 49ers. And in interviews, he was saying the most bizarre things.
Yeah.
Come on. And so Art Kelly's just sitting there. They're like, Art, we can use you for this. And Art began to nail it. First of all you have to do is to deliver these bizarre lines like they're the most serious thing you've ever said in your life.
Yeah.
And that was the comedy. And they used him so much, about 2 or 3 seasons, and it was great. Yeah, it was fantastic. It was hilarious. And as the crew, we're backstage dying. We're just having a great time because it's one of our guys and he's doing well on television.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth, actually. I was about to go down that path and ask that. Like, would you watch the show film every night?
Oh, yeah.
So for
mostly, I mean, sometimes I would have other things to do. If I didn't have an effect, I would have something prepared for tomorrow.
Sure.
And I'd go off. But, for the most part, yeah, I watched it every night as it was taped because, you're just at work.
Did it get old?
Good question. Not really. Because there was just always, when you're laughing all day, laughing never gets old.
Yeah.
And that's what we did, whether we were laughing with the material, laughing at the material, or laughing amongst ourselves. It was always funny.
Did you ever
as the crew, you laugh at the material a lot.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And also the conundrum of how we're going to make this work. And the pressure of, we've only got a couple hours and things like that. I can imagine laughter was very, very at the surface for you most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
Where was your office?
Funny. I didn't have an office during the Dave days.
Okay.
So I hung out a lot with the prop guys, or I hung out a lot down in this, in the second green room downstairs, or I'd go hang out with my buddy, Gary Cathell, the sound effects guy, because he and I often worked together. I did an effect and he would do the sound on it. Yeah. I was a nomad a lot of times, but then when Dave was gone and Colbert came in, then I had an office and it was up in the balcony.
It was up in the balcony. Okay.
It was up in the balcony. Yeah.
I got
so
you.
my world with Dave was always stage right. I was always there when the guests came in because that was, we had gotten in the habit of being there from the very beginning. And sometimes my effects would have to happen from there. So I hung out there a lot. And then the next year when the next Colbert, I was the next guy. When Colbert came in, all of a sudden my world is now in the balcony. So it was a completely different thing.
Was the energy different between the two shows?
Absolutely.
Yeah? How would you compare them?
Well, first of all, since I was in the balcony, I was much more of a spectator.
Gotcha. Watching
the whole thing happen. Now, we did that with Letterman too. A lot of times, if I wasn't on stage right and I really wanted to see the show, I would go up to the balcony and watch the show. But, they were both machines. Dave was a little more polished in that space because he had been there much longer. And Colbert, I'm sure they were much more of a machine in the other space. And they did ultimately become a machine in that space. But, they were in a small space, and then all of a sudden they're in the Ed Sullivan Theater. So they had to kind of get used to it, but they really worked it out well. And obviously, the show is doing well. I guess even under COVID, I don't know now, but yeah, it was it just went from a good show to a good show.
Sure. Yeah. Very different, obviously, but the sensibilities and the energy, like you say, you were hanging out stage right. So you saw Dave make a lot of runs across that stage. And
oh yeah. Well, we had to hang out upstage first. We couldn't hang out with him because he's preparing. So we would go all the way upstage because that's where the loading doors were. And we'd go up there. Then as soon as he ran on, then we'd go out and hang out in our spot,
There's a lot of people watching this right now thinking with the idea that there's a dude or a select group of people that got a chance to literally see almost every single late show performance for years and years and years on end. Are there times that you miss it? Do you miss going into to the Ed Sullivan Theater?
You know what? I miss the theater more than I miss the show.
Interesting.
I miss the theater more than I miss the people, because that's what helps make the theater. But it's just something about working in a theater that's iconic.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to walk anywhere and everywhere in that space because you're part of the team, and so I miss that, I miss the whole art deco look of it and the feel of it. And I remember the very first day I was there, it's like, wow, this is the Ed Sullivan Theater. Oh my God. And now it's like, oh, the Ed Sullivan Theater. I miss it.
but decades later, you're still able to bring that tangible magic back and that feeling. And I've only had a chance as a fan to be there a couple of times, but every time that, even sometimes I'd walk into the marquee, like there was, I don't even know how to explain it. We talked about the energy of New York earlier. The Ed Sullivan Theater has an energy to it. It just does.
Well, it's funny when you say that, and you were talking about the energy earlier, and I was thinking of this. Now, think about being backstage, and we're preparing for the show. We've had rehearsals. We have a little break now, and now it's time to start getting in. It's time to introduce the band. The band now goes in, and they're playing their warm up, and Paul's the last one out. And then when Paul comes in, they play one more tune, and then it's time for Dave to come and do his warm up. Now, all of that has a building energy. First is all the introductions, then it's the music, then it's Paul, then it's Dave, and then we go to we go off, and then Dave comes back to do the top of the show. And it's like boom. But also what happens while that is happening is they're loading in the audience. When they're loading in first we have the empty theater where we cleaned it up, everything's been polished on the stage, and
it's show ready.
Getting the show ready, getting the space ready, and it's quiet, and the doors open, and these people start coming in, and they're always so excited to be there. So that's the energy right there. They're bringing that off the street. They're bringing that from Vancouver. They're bringing that from Austin. They're bringing that from Germany. They're bringing it from everywhere. They're so excited to be there. And once they get in the seat and the warm-ups happen, and then finally the show happens, that energy has been mounting for the last 40 minutes. And then it's at this fever pitch, and then Dave goes out there and does the monologue. And if it's a killer monologue, we know we're off and running. And usually it was. Even if it wasn't, the genius that Dave was, he would still find a way to bring it back around, to get that laugh and move us forward.
Absolutely. What was it like working for, I've heard good things about either being a contractor or working for Worldwide Pants. I heard they're really, really fun to work for.
Yeah. I didn't work for them, like I said, but worked with them.
Yes.
One of the best things about Worldwide Pants and Dave was around Christmas time. There was always gifts. The producers would give us gifts. The executive producers would give us gifts. There was a time when every Christmas we would get Nikes, and they always had Late Show on the heel. Every year, brand new Nikes with Late Show.
You're talking to a Jordan collector here, so I'm already jealous.
There you go. The director would give us a fleece or something to go under our jacket, and Dave would give us a Worldwide Pants jacket every single Christmas. So when we would go to the Christmas party, well, no, it would be before the Christmas party. It was the last day of the show, before taking the Christmas break. And so you'd go to wherever your office is, or in my case, it would be in the green room or the prop. Did you get your box, and you go and you find your name, and then you have all your gifts, or some intern is finding you and bringing them to you, and everyone gets their gifts. And also, what was the best thing about that last show before Christmas is my crew did Baby Come Back It's Christmas with Darlene Love.
Oh,
and my crew, we made it snow. And we made it snow in the entire theater. I had to hire 6 guys. Luckily, we had a catwalk so we could get up there and have bags of it. And we would have wind machines, and we would attach them to the rail, little small wind machines. And what our method was, and I got it from my boss, Gene, and it became my method after I became the boss, is we would have buckets of fake snow next to us, and we'd have our machine, our wind machine. And we had it pointing at a 45-degree angle. So what we did is we would take one hand of snow, put it in front of the fan, and twinkle it through so that it went through. And then while that hand was going, the other hand goes, so that there's never a gap. Because if we did one hand, you would see snow, gap, snow, gap. So in order to have a full nonstop snow, I taught people to do this. And so when you got 6 guys around doing that all over the stage, it's just this flow of snow that doesn't stop. But in the first 2 rows, we had snow machines. So we had the audience getting snow on them in the first 2 rows.
Sure.
So if you sat behind that, not only are you looking at the stage with all this snow falling, you're looking through snow. Luckily, you have the monitors up there and you can see the whole thing. It was a thing, and we really, really perfected it. So when I watch Darlene Love now on other shows doing that song for Christmas, I go, that's not our snow.
No, and I can say the same from a fan perspective too, or from a viewer perspective. I think that watching Darlene do that every year, you talk about this momentum and energy momentum. I think every single year that she showed up, you guys did a really good job, or she did a really good job of kind of upping the ante. And it really was one of those iconic television moments, kind of like when we'd watch, Frosty the Snowman as a kid, or Charlie Brown Christmas or whatever. This was one of those modern day moments that would show up at the holiday time that you guys helped create.
I can't tell you, Mike, how much fun that was. Sometimes like, got to go do the work today. Because everybody has a day, but I never felt that way doing the snow. The snow was just this thing. And it sounds silly. Oh, we're making it snow inside with fake snow. No, but it looked so cool.
Yes.
And every year, what I always look forward to from the director, from the producers, every year they would go, best snow ever. And I knew they were not pulling my leg.
Well, it created a feeling, one that we continually talk about. Glynn, I just, as we're starting to close this up a little bit, I know that there's going to be questions that are going to pop in. I don't know if you'd be willing to do this again. It'd be amazing if you would.
Sure.
Let's give some fodder for some of these fans that might have questions out there. Give us a laundry list of some of the props that you have built that made it on screen to some of these things that we might remember, or ones we might not remember, but you remember very well. What's the top few memories that you have of things that you helped create for the show?
Well, of course, Vibrating Desk.
Yep.
Man on Fire. Now, there was 3 particular stuntmen we used over the years, but we used one mostly, Don Hewitt, who at the time was in his 60s and had been a movie stuntman for 40 years. This is a guy who's jumped off buildings, crashed cars, been on full burns, the entire body, but we would just do his back. But sometimes we had these gigantic flames going. And Man on Fire, I must have set Don Hewitt on fire I would say in a 10-year period, maybe 50 times. And his son was also Don Hewitt Jr., and I must have set him on fire 5 times.
Oh, he kept up with the family business, did he? He kept it going.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did. And there was another guy named Mickey who I must have set on fire maybe a couple of times. So easily like 60 times, I'm guessing. I mean, I have no actual proof of it.
Sure.
But by the way it felt over 10 years, it must have been 50, 60 times. I mean, we did it so much. We did it outside when it was the coldest day of the year. What's the joke? Oh, this person's over here. He's really cold. Oh, look at this lady. Look at this guy, and he's got all the flames going. He's just walking down the street. Oh, we just did it for everything. American Airlines had a scandal, and with the CEO or something. So here's the CEO from American Airlines telling you why, but whatever. And then, he comes running in and he's on fire. We had so many reasons to do Man on Fire. So that was one of my favorites, because who else could say they set a guy on fire today?
Yep.
Nobody, So that was cool. Another one wasn't necessarily one of my favorites, but I'm sure everybody remembers it, the diving dogs.
Absolutely.
Well, we would fill up this gigantic pool. My crew would get there at 6 o'clock in the morning. The scenery guys, the carpenters would get there before that, and they would set up the pool. So when we get there, they're still setting up. And by the time they were done, we would take our apparatuses and hook them up to the fire plugs. And we had 2, and we would spend easily 4 hours filling the pool.
Sure.
And so that was fun. And then at the evening, we had to drain it. And when we get to a certain level, we would just kick it open and let the water run down. And then another favorite was on Halloween. For years, we blew up approximately 1,000-pound pumpkin on 53rd Street.
You exploded the sucker.
We blew that sucker up. Yes, we did. Now, I wasn't the lead on that. I gaffed the crew. I got everybody together. We did all the stuff.
Yep.
And we would bring in a movie guy because some of the explosives we used, we didn't have because we were just a comedy TV show.
Right.
But we would bring in a movie guy who would bring in black powder and boom, you know. And eventually the city went, okay, no more of this.
Oh, the city shut it down.
Oh, the city's commission on television and film was in our building. Okay, on the 6th floor. So whenever we did stuff, we would get permits to do them.
Right.
But then they sometimes, you know, the producers would get us to do it a little too much. And what happened was the commissioner one day was at his desk and we blew up a Coca-Cola machine.
Right.
The writers decided, let's blow up a Coca-Cola machine on 53rd Street.
As one does, yes.
As one does. And so it was, and when I mean a machine, I mean, you know, you put the quarters in and the machine, you know, the Cokes come down, it's filled with Coca-Cola. We got it out there on 53rd Street and our movie guy loads it up with the black powder. Boom! It shook windows for blocks.
Oh.
The Coke machine fell over backwards on its back. I mean, it looked like it died and Coke was squirting upwards. It was
beautiful.
Hilarious.
It's perfect.
But here comes the movie commissioner. God damn it! No more! Did you guys know? So we started going out to Coney Island and doing it on the beach.
Oh,
but
okay,
yeah,
okay.
we just too much.
Red tape spoiling a good thing.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always loved when Dave would interact with the city of New York, and one of the things that I know that you were a part of too was the you would put on the hot day, they would put the hose up and then
hose cam.
The hose camera. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was always a lot of fun to see that.
Well, here's the thing. Again, we hooked it up to a fire hydrant. I would put up the sprinkler system, and there was 2 manhole covers on the sidewalk. I always aimed for the second one, and basically I learned this particular effect from my boss before, Gene Gephardt.
Right.
And I carried it on, but I started aiming for that particular manhole cover, and the camera was a little pencil lipstick camera, and would put it just above it or just below so that you could see the spray and where it would land.
Yep.
Now, Dave had camera, he had sound, so he could speak and hear, and I would give him a control box, and he could literally control that sprinkler system from his desk. So every time it hit 90 degrees, hose cam, and we'd have to, you know, it was a crew of us. I would do the water stuff. I have another guy, and we would do the water stuff, and the camera guys and the audio guys would do that. And they would say, "This is Mayor Bloomberg," or whatever, and, and people would, you know, get out in front because they wanted to get wet, and some people did not want to get wet. There's a few times where that happened, where they came to me and were upset with me as if I did it. It's like, no, Dave has
because it's your fault, right? Yeah.
It's my fault because I'm standing there, yeah. And I just had to, and I was specifically on those days not wear anything that said late show. So if someone didn't like it, they would not come to me. It must have been on my face because they always came to me.
They knew you were the guy in charge.
They knew I was the guy in charge, yeah. So, but yeah, every time I hit 90. And so that was great. When we would do that, it was just so cool that he was able to do it from his desk, and it may look like that switch didn't really work. That switch really worked.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's what we always wonder, like as the fan, you know, when Dave's got the control pad or the telephone or whatever it is in front of him, and
it works.
Hitting things. You got to wonder is that real time or is that just, you know, TV magic? But he actually had control over that stuff.
Oh yeah, he turned it on, he turned it off, he turned it on, he turned it off, and because he could hear and see, you know, it was like you and I hit a switch now and you get hit by water. As a matter of fact, we did that one day. So the writers, they don't know this, but I used to call the writers and the producers, and my boss and I, before I became the head, we always called the writers and the producers the geniuses. And so,
not said tongue in cheek at all. You thought they were legitimate geniuses, didn't you?
Oh yeah, sure we did. Yeah. So so when the geniuses would come up with something, we make it work. And so what did the geniuses come up with today? One day they had Zach Galpa. How do you say it? Zach
Galifianakis. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, my
You're welcome.
freak is not exactly what it used to be. And so we had him in the green room one day because they wanted it to work inside. So Dave said, "This is the switch that makes it work." See, and he does it, and the camera's outside. He said, "Well, this one is for indoors." And their first idea was to put it in the audience. And I went, "You guys are crazy. You guys are crazy." And so they decided ultimately to do it in the green room. And he's sitting there reading a magazine, and the camera goes to him. Perfect. You know, and now this switch doesn't work. I'm right there at the door on a ladder with a hose. And when I get the cue, I hit Zach right in the face. They say, "Hit him right in the face." Okay, Zach, I'm gonna hit you in the face. And so of course I would put it on spray. It wouldn't be on a stream, so it wouldn't knock his eye out or anything like that.
Right.
And when I got the cue, I hit him, and he's reacting to it, and just totally. And I could hear the audience out in the audience just cracking up. And then Dave says, and now I'm gonna turn it off because I could also see the monitor, but the stage manager was there and touched me, and I turned it off when Dave hit off. And then Zach just picked up the magazine and started reading like nothing happened at all. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. So sometimes we had to throw things together like that.
Sure. But, well, you know what? You're talking about all these moments that to many of us who are watching this are iconic. They're magic moments. And you've given us a lot of things to look up on YouTube today and some memories to relive. I can't tell you how grateful I am. At this point here, for those who are watching the video, if you want to throw some comments down, some questions, things like that, for the next time that we do this with Glynn, that would be amazing.
Sure.
Glynn, thank you so much for taking time to do this. So you're retired now, but you still live in New York, right?
I still live in New York. Yeah, I am retired, retired union guy, collecting that pension. and producing my own shows.
And that is really exciting too. Please keep us posted on that. And we will definitely come back with some other questions and different, things that we have. It's fascinating to have you as a resource to give us a little bit of behind the scenes, information about what happened at the show. And it's really gratifying to hear that you loved the job for as long as you did.
Oh, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. You could be a big kid. You could, like I said, who else gets to set stuntmen on fire? So
that's really, really cool. I can't thank you enough for taking time to do this. It was a real
my
thrill.
pleasure.
And I can't wait till the next time that we talk a little bit more. Glynn Borders, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in once again to, if we're going to call it Tales from the Late Show, whatever it's called. But either way, we're really grateful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.